파라다이스, 지상 낙원. 세상 사람들은 제가 살고 있는 곳을 흔히 이렇게 표현합니다. 에메랄드빛 바다와 푸르른 산 위로 사시사철 포근한 햇살이 내려앉는 곳. 이곳은 하와이입니다. 2005년 저는 한국을 떠나 하와이로 왔습니다. 24살 처음 만난 하와이는 너무나 아름다웠고 사람들은 더없이 상냥했습니다. 이들과 함께하며 눈부신 자연을 누리자면 짧은 여행으로는 부족했습니다. 저는 이곳에 정착하기로 마음먹었습니다. 그런데 살면서 보니 하와이는 겉으로 드러나는 아름다움 이면에 엄청난 이야기를 품고 있었습니다. 처음 제가 하와이를 여행할 때는 상상도 못했던 이야기들을 말입니다. 지금부터 그 이야기를 들려드리려고 합니다. 하와이에는 현재 7만여 명의 한국인이 살고 있습니다. 한국인이면서 동시에 하와이 사람으로 살아가는 사람들. 왜 이들은 고국을 떠나 낯선 이국 땅에서 살아가고 있는 걸까요? 하와이의 공식 별명은 무지개주, 레인보우 스테이트입니다. 하와이에서는 무지개를 정말 자주 볼 수 있지만 그런 이유 때문만은 아니고요. 다문화, 다민족 사회이기 때문이죠. 백인이건 흑인이건 한국인이건 어떤 인종도 전체의 4분의 1을 넘지 않습니다. 7가지 색이 조화를 이루어 하나의 빛을 내는 무지개처럼 다양한 사람들이 모여 하와이라는 조화로운 세상을 만들고 있는 겁니다. 하와이 생활 15년 차. 저는 그동안 기자로 일하면서 하와이 사회 곳곳에서 당당하고 또 성실하게 살아가는 많은 한국인 이민자들을 만나왔습니다. 그러다 문득 궁금해졌습니다. 우리가 만들어가고 있는 이 역사의 시작에는 누가 있었을까 하고요. 맨 처음 하와이에 온 한국인은 누구이며 언제 어떤 계기로 왔을까요? 역사책 속 하와이에 관한 기록은 1700년대 후반으로 거슬러 올라갑니다. 그로부터 약 100년이 지난 어느 날 촬영된 사진 한 장에 시선이 멈췄습니다. 갓을 쓴 남자들, 치마 저고리를 입은 어린아이들. 1903년 1월 13일은 조선인 102명이 최초로 하와이 땅을 밟은 날입니다. 구한 말, 그들은 어떤 마음으로 무엇을 위해 머나먼 미지의 땅을 향해 떠난 걸까요? 1830년 하와이에서 사탕수수 산업이 성황을 이루면서 농장주들은 세계 각국에서 노동자들을 모집했습니다. 가난하고 척박했던 조선 땅에서도 100명이 넘는 어른과 아이들이 더 나은 미래를 꿈꾸며 인천 제물포항에 모였습니다. 고국을 떠난 지 20여일 만에 이들은 호놀룰루 항에 도착했습니다. 1903년 1월 13일 미주 한인 이민 역사가 시작된 날입니다. 하와이에서 그들은 꿈꾸었던 미래를 만날 수 있었을까요?
나는 4시 30분에 일어나 아침을 먹었다. 새벽 5시 30분부터 오후 4시 30분까지 일했다. 고작 점심시간 30분이 휴식 시간이었다. 내 십장은 독일인이었다. 그는 매우 엄격했다. 일단 일을 시작하면 우리가 담배를 피우는 것이나 허리를 펴는 것도 허용하지 않았다.
I mean, you're basically a wage slave. My grandfather made $18 a month, working 6 days a week. There's a section where you see a lot of the, Korean or other immigrants, and they died really young.
하와이행에 모든 걸 걸었던 그들의 도전은 의미가 있는 것이었을까요?
And so they sort of had a diligence to them. Not all Koreans were diligent. There were some misfits, but by and large, the people were, and they worked hard. There weren't many Koreans at that point, but it was such that it made Korea, people here in Hawaii, aware of Korea. And of course, added to that is as they settled in, they brought their traditions, they brought their culture with them, they brought their foods. And so all these different things sort of added to the dynamics of what Hawaii was all about.
한인 이민자들은 농장에서의 외로운 삶에 서서히 적응해 갔습니다. 가정을 꾸려 정착하기를 꿈꿨지만 마음대로 되지는 않았는데요. 이 사진들은 한인 이민사에서 중요한 의미를 지닙니다. 1903년부터 1905년 일제에 의해 해외 이민이 중단될 때까지 하와이에 온 이민 1세대 대다수는 남성이고 여성은 전체 9%에 불과했습니다. 신부감을 구하는데 애를 먹은 이민자들은 소위 사진 혼인 중매자들을 통해 한국에서 신부감을 구했고 1910년부터 24년까지 하와이에는 이 사진 신부의 물결이 이어져 약 700여 명의 여성이 하와이로 갔습니다. 하지만 이 여성들이 하와이에 와서 만난 신랑은 사진 속의 젊고 멋있는 남자가 아니라 초라한 중년의 남성인 경우가 더 많았습니다.
I know she came to Hawaii when she was 18. She became a picture bride, and she never met my grandfather, and she doesn't know anything about that, and she had no real, as a woman, as a female in Korea, especially if you're orphan, you have no, status, nothing, so she came, that was her only option,
남편들은 벌써 나이들이 들어서 그야말로 일을 못하고 있는 그런 경우가 많았어요. 그러니까 소위 말해서 가장 노릇을 했어야 했어요. 하고 싶어서 한 게 아니라 했어야 했기 때문에 지금 말하면 억세다고 할 수도 있지만 그렇게 생활을 하신 분들이에요.
낯선 문화, 낯선 땅. 비록 자신은 이국 땅에서 생을 마치는 날까지 차별과 가난의 늪을 벗어나지 못할 것이 뻔하지만 자식들은 사회의 당당한 일원으로 자라기를 원했을 겁니다. 한인 이민자들은 자녀들의 교육에 헌신했습니다.
If you look at the University of Hawaii records, say in the 30s and the 40s, 20s, 30s, and 40s, you see a lot of kids, Korean, second-generation Korean kids, going to school here. And then going on and becoming teachers, becoming physicians, becoming lawyers. And so really going after those important jobs.
하와이 한인 이민자들의 첫 학교는 이민 3년 만인 1906년에 설립됐습니다. 한인들의 기부금과 감리 교단에 의해 설립된 이 학교는 다음에 이승만 박사가 설립하는 한인 기독학원으로 발전했습니다. 이민자들은 곧이어 십시일반 돈을 모아 한글 학교를 세워 자녀들의 국어 교육에도 힘썼는데요. 당장 먹고 살기도 힘든 빠듯한 생활에도 이민자들이 교육에 그토록 열심이었던 데에는 깊은 뜻이 있습니다.
이민이 1905년 6월에 끝나요. 이제 곧 있다가 을사보호조약이라는 걸 우리가 맺잖아요. 그러니까 이제 통탄들을 하면서 결국은 이분들이 느낀 게 백성이 무지몽매하여 나라를 잃게 되었다. 그래서 교육을 해야 된다.
이민 2년 만에 고국에서 들려온 가슴 아픈 소식. 먼 조국 땅의 국권을 되찾기 위해 이민자들은 하나가 됐습니다. 안중근 의사 전기에는 1909년 그가 이토 히로부미 저격 후 재판에 섰을 때 하와이 한인들이 재판 경비를 모아 보낸 기록이 남아있는데요. 사탕수수 농장별로 명시된 한인 남녀 1,600여 명이 모은 기부액은 총 2,916달러, 요즘의 화폐 가치로 약 9천만 원에 이릅니다. 그 후에도 우리나라가 주권을 되찾을 때까지 한인들은 여러 단체를 조직해 거국적으로 움직이는가 하면 사탕수수밭 하루 일당 6, 70센트 중 누구는 10센트, 또 누구는 30센트씩 보태 독립운동 자금을 마련했는데요. 이렇게 모은 독립운동 자금은 세계 곳곳에서 조국 광복을 위해 애쓰던 이들에게 전해졌습니다. 특히 상당수는 미주 본토 동포들이 마련한 돈과 함께 상해 임시정부에 닿아 윤봉길, 이봉창 같은 애국지사의 의거로 이어지기도 했습니다. 이민자들이 뙤약볕 아래에서 고된 노동을 한 대가가 해외 독립운동에 자금처 역할을 했다니 정말 뜻밖이었습니다. 놀라운 건 그뿐이 아닙니다.
1907년 때 벌써 여성 단체를 조직을 합니다. 신명 부인회라는 부인회를 조직해서 활동을 해요.
한국에서 3.1 운동이 거행됐다는 소식에 하와이 곳곳에 흩어져 있던 여성단체들은 대한부인구제회라는 통합된 여성 조직을 결성합니다. 대한부인구제회는 오아우뿐 아니라 하와이 주요 섬마다 지부가 있었습니다. 그들은 결성 후 첫 사업으로 대한독립선언서 포스터 3,000여 장을 컬러로 제작하고 하와이는 물론 미주 본토 한인들에게 판매해 독립운동 기금을 모았습니다. 만주에서 활동하던 대한독립군에게 800여 달러를 보낸 기록도 남아 있습니다. 김치를 비롯해 한국 음식을 만들어 팔고 공연을 해서 입장료를 거두는 등 온갖 방식으로 대한부인구제회가 독립을 위해 마련한 기금은 기록에 남은 것만도 20만 달러, 지금의 화폐 가치로 무려 44억 원에 이릅니다.
국민회도 있었고 동지회도 있었지만은 그분들은 직접 돈을 마서 한 게 아니라 언제든지 회비를 걷고 특수 후원금을 얻고 해서 했는데 여자들은 나가서 돈을 벌어서 직접 벌어서 이 후원을 했다는 게 아주 특별한 것이죠. 네.
독립 후에도 이 여성 단체들의 활동은 1970년대까지 이어져 홍수나 재해 등 고국에 어려움이 닥칠 때면 십시일반 쌈짓돈을 모아 후원금을 보냈습니다. (100년이) 넘게 이어온 우리 선조들의 땀과 희생, 그 결과로 탄생한 곳이 있습니다. 호놀룰루 마노아 산자락에 위치한 하와이 대학교에 들어서면 눈에 익은 한국식 건물이 반깁니다. 대학 캠퍼스 안에 한국학 연구를 위한 독자적인 건물이 있는 곳은 전 세계에 한국을 제외하고는 여기 하와이 대학교가 유일합니다.
하와이 한인 규모 자체가 이 북미에서 가장 크고 역사가 길고 그런 교육의 필요가 있었기 때문에 그 두 개가 이제 함께 결합이 된 것 같아요. 일정한 규모의 한국학 연구자가 모이면서 이제 한국학 연구소를 설립하는 운동이 시작되고 그래서 1972년도에 한국학 연구소가 출범을 했거든요. 이런 한인 이민의 이 자료와 역사적인 어떤 성과를 이 하와이 대학교 나가서 세계적으로 공유하는 어떤 그런 허브 역할을 할 수 있도록 만들자 이런 생각으로 좀 그런 작업이 진행되고 있습니다.
한국학연구소는 한인 이민사 관련 컬렉션도 다량 소장하고 있는데요. 학자들의 자료도 있지만 이민 후손들이 후세를 위해 기증한 가보나 부모의 유품도 많습니다. 그중 가장 눈에 띄는 것은 역시 태극기입니다. 이 태극기는 장모에게서 물려받았다며 어느 하와이 한인이 기증한 건데요. 세월이 흘러도 색이 바라지 않는 광목천에 한 땀 한 땀. 누가 만든 것인지 기록은 남아있지 않지만 하와이 독립운동의 역사가 고스란히 배어 있습니다. 지난 7달 이민 선조들의 발자취를 더듬으며 저는 새로운 고민이 생겼습니다. 잊어서는 안 될 우리의 역사를, 선조들의 소중한 목소리를 어떻게 하면 더 많은 이들과 나눌 수 있을까 하고 말입니다. 그러다 이 사진을 보게 됐습니다. 처음 취재를 시작할 때 봤던 바로 그 사진입니다. 지금 보니 그는 그저 갓을 쓴 남자가 아니었습니다. 그저 한복을 입은 여자가 아니었습니다. 그녀는 조국을 위해 싸운 사람이고 그는 후세들의 교육에 전념한 사람입니다. 그리고 그들은 지금의 우리를 있게 했습니다.
하와이 선인들은 참 대단한 분이었어요. 스스로 이제 나라 잃은 그 백성으로서의 서름을 딛고 서로 돕고 또 그러면서 스스로 조직하고 또 그 자기 자신을 넘어서서 이제 이 사회 전체를 위해서 뭔가를 해낸 사람들이잖아요.
Well, my grandfather always said, and it came down through my dad, that Koreans never give up. They never have given up, and they never will give up. And so it was stamped within our foreheads, so to speak.
They've always been entrepreneurial, you know, and so they were able to get out of plantation work, which many of them came here initially to do, almost right away and began to build businesses. And so they have that legacy here in Hawaii, which is very, very proud.
Perfect. And it's the diversity of Hawaii that makes Hawaii so successful. In appreciating and understanding and respecting each of the different cultures, it's just beautiful as far as what the relationships are. And that's why I'm so very, very proud of the Koreans' contribution to the county of Oahu and the state of Hawaii as a whole.
I think that we got to come to a point where, yeah, we are different. That's great. Let's appreciate our differences, religion, gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is, that kind of thing. Otherwise, this anti-Asian, anti-black, anti-whatever, transsexual, anti-this, anti is going to continue to go on until we really deal with it on the level of, what is this about?
Korea, from earliest times on, was producing just masterpieces in art, literature, and it's often forgotten. And so I'm thinking, I'm hoping that if Korean kids in particular, but basically everybody, if they can understand their past and understand their history, then they can stand up to this. Even if they're being attacked, they can know that they can fight back, that this is not right. So my answer is empowerment. Study history and be empowered. Know your roots, know how strong your traditions are, and defend them.
1903년 하와이에 도착한 한인 이민자 102명. 저는 이제 그들 개개인의 삶 속으로 더 깊숙이 들어가 보려 합니다. 이민 1세대 직계 자손들을 만나 잊혀져가는 역사 속 선조들의 목소리를 찾고 그들의 지혜를 기록하며 우리가 다음 세대를 위해 만들어가야 할 미래를 함께 고민해보고 싶습니다. 하와이 하면 뭐가 생각나시나요?
Good afternoon. My name is Tae-Ung, Director of the Center for Korean Studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I'm also a professor of law at the William S. Richardson School of Law at this university. Thank you very much for joining today's event, which is second event of the two-day Korean Diaspora talk. Yesterday, we had an event with President Jeff Jung of KBFD TV, producer Jung Tae-Lee, along with our member, Mrs. Lee Murabayashi, President of Korean Immigration Research Institute. Today, we have a director and producer, Mrs. Jinyoung Lee Won, who created a beautiful documentary film, 6-episode movies titled titled Words of Wisdom from the Rainbow State. Yesterday, we watched part of the video documentary Puzzle and the Story of Dream Picture Prize. And this video in part deepening our understanding of those Korean diaspora related subjects. The Center for Korean Studies has extensive immigration related data and resources which provides foundation of Korean immigration research and diaspora studies. Owing to generous support by many sectors, including the Academy of Korean Studies, we have been continuing our strategic research project dealing with the Korean diaspora as an important part. And as a part of this SRI project, we have been documenting and disseminating the results of digitized version of the collection data, and also try to expand and extend our Korean diaspora study. The Center for Korean Studies at Manhwa actually contributed a little bit to these episodes of documentary movies, but it was really the results of vigorous efforts of Director Lee, who are sitting next to me. These movies are absolutely beautiful and astoundingly educational. So I would like to congratulate again her on her excellent achievement. I would like to also thank my center staff who had helped with this project as well as today's event. My center staff includes Mrs. Morsi, Roboguen, Courtney Oshiro-Chin, Han-Min Kim, and visiting scholar Yeli An. Today we have two guests. On my left is Mrs. Jinyoung Lee Won. Thank you very much for coming. And also Mrs. Tae-Ung Murabayashi. Thank you very much for coming. I hope we will have a chance to appreciate part of the films and think about the implication of the film on Korean immigration studies and Korean American society in Hawaii. Before beginning, I would like to suggest to watch a news link that shows us the process as well as the gist of these films.
The 41st Hawaii International Film Festival was held in November. The Words of Wisdom from the Rainbow State is a short documentary by Korean-American director Jinyoung Lee, which was officially invited to the festival for a special screening on November 6th. The film renders interviews with descendants of Korean immigrants in Hawaii, where the first immigrants from Korea started to arrive in the United States in 1903. The documentary portrays the value and wisdom of life and the role of future generations of Koreans that had been passed on from the first-generation immigrants to their descendants. It was completed with the active support and participation of the Korean Consulate General in Honolulu and the local Korean community. After the screening, director Jinyoung Lee, former Hawaii Supreme Court Chief Justice Ronald Moon, and former Hawaii County Mayor Harry Kim participated in the panel discussion on the role of Koreans in Hawaii's immigrant community. This short film was screened at several international film festivals. It was named as a finalist in the Stockholm City Film Festival and won the Best First-Time Filmmaker Award at the Tagore International Film Festival and the Liberty International Movie Festival in Korea. The United States is indeed a multicultural country where immigrants from all over the world are able to maintain their own colors and live in harmony. Check out this short documentary to gain the wisdom of the Rainbow State that is offered by the Korean community in Hawaii.
This is an excellent opportunity for us to learn about this wonderful achievement. I would like to start our discussion by asking questions. First, to Director Lee. How did you start this project?
Thank you. To begin with the conversation, I would like to sincerely thank you for having me today. I was born and raised in Seoul, Korea. And when I was like 25, I moved to Hawaii. It's my like 17th year. And it wasn't until like maybe 5 years ago when I really started started thinking about the Korean immigrant history. One day I was in my daughter's elementary school, and there was a building named after Donald Kim. And when I saw the name Kim, I was wondering, who this person is, because Kim is obviously the Korean name, but I didn't know who that person was. But later I realized that he donated a large sum of money, not just to University of Hawaii, not just to the elementary school, but UH and also even universities in Korea. And soon after, I had I was lucky to meet him in person. So I asked him, "Hi, Chairman Kim, what was your motivation to donate that much money throughout your professional career?" Then he said that it was not even a charity work. He said he always remembered people before him who came to Hawaii and sacrificed so much to give us the comfort that we have now. So for him, sharing what he has with the future generation is simply a responsibility as an adult. When he said that, it was like really an eye-opening comment. It kind of made me think that, really, we owe a lot to our ancestors, like all of us as an adult. So then I try to think, what I could do. Obviously, I cannot do something Chairman Kim has been doing, but as a journalist, I thought, to document and to preserve like those words of wisdom for the future generation is something I could do as a journalist if I want to call myself a journalist. So I started documenting, whatever I have from the interviews that I had previously or the Korean immigrant history that I was able to find from library. I was hoping one day maybe I will have like friends who are willing to do this project with me, to be a videographer and all that. And I didn't expect to make a documentary in the beginning, but then when I was writing a scenario, there was an amazing thing happened. It was early last year. Korean consulate had this open competition for digital content creation. So I applied with my proposal and with my scenario, and it got accepted. And that's how I was able to cover the big part of the production cost, and I was able to hire great videographer and great editor who I worked with on this project, actually.
Wow, it is an amazing story, and there were a lot more work than creating a video, I understand now. But you did manage everything very successfully. Thank you very much. Mrs. Dakili Murabayashi, I know your assistance in this project was crucial. What would you say about the meaning of this project?
Well, first of all, I'm really happy to have this woman finally doing immigration research, not only on paper or in writing, but she actually produces an image. And it's not only image making, she's great. She's actually doing her own research as well as this filmmaking. So I'm really, really happy and delighted to have her. Thank you.
That's very sweet of Mrs. Murabayashi. She is one of the biggest contributor for sure. I called her like day and night for like fact check, and the books that she wrote previously were like those were like Bibles for for the time that I was producing this documentary. And I wouldn't have blamed her if she didn't answer my phone one day, because I was calling her every single day, but she always answered my phone, and I'm really grateful for all of her work.
She forgot to mention one thing. I'm her ancestor in her college.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Ancestor? Only friends?
Not two generations away.
Very good. So, directly, can you explain the details of this meaning of the title, Words of Wisdom? How did you choose this title? What is the purpose of this title?
It's kind of long. I noticed that in when you were giving introduction, you could remember the title of it. Believe me, it's not just you. Like, not anyone can remember this long title at once. Words of Wisdom from the Rainbow State. I was thinking if there's a better title, but I couldn't find one. I just went with it. The reason is that whenever I met good people, it doesn't have to be successful people, but when I meet good people who are Korean descendants, I always ask them, do you have a words of wisdom from your family, parents or grandparents that you want to pass on to the next generation? The reason is that we all know that first Korean immigrants and their family had very hard lives, but then still some of them were able to raise good kids, good citizens, and who became contributing members of the society. So I wanted to find out what that secret, is, what the family legacy is that we can kind of preserve for the future generation.
May I add one word of wisdom? I would like to suggest to change the Korean wisdom of KWWRS. You know why? Because you mentioned earlier in the first episode, Korean Women's Relief Society, KWRS. It matches with this, Korean wisdom from Rainbow.
I didn't think that. Yeah, you're right. That's the 대한부인구제회.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for inspirational comment. If we do make season 2, I will really.
It works. It's perfectly Korean wisdom.
That's great. Right. Well, it is also going beyond Korea, I would say, because it's she is dealing with the universal values that Korean immigration history shows. So, but I fully I like that kind of rhyme and the kind of the acronym. So, probably.
With the KWRS all the time.
Very good. So at this stage, I think it will be good for us to take a look at those trailers of those episodes.
You're basically a wage slave. My grandfather made $18 a month, working 6 days a week.
There weren't many Koreans at that point, but it was such that it made Korea, people here in Hawaii, aware of Korea.
이제 곧 있다가 을사보조약이라는 걸 우리가 맺잖아요. 그러니까 이제 백성이 무지몽매하여 나라를 잃게 되었다.
자기 자신을 넘어서서 이제 이 사회 전체를 위해서 뭔가를 해낸 사람들이잖아요. There are 6 episodes in total, I understand. Can you introduce each of them briefly?
Yes, sure. So the first one we call a prologue episode. It shows Korean immigrant history from my point of view. It acts as like an introductory episode of the 5 following episodes. So prologue episodes stand as it is as a short documentary, and it follows with 5 interviews with direct Korean descendants. The prologue episode is the one actually that was selected from a lot of festivals, and I was happy that people who are not from Hawaii were still able to understand, the meaning of it. Let me show you some part of the prologue. 파라다이스, 지상 낙원. 세상 사람들은 제가 살고 있는 곳을 흔히 이렇게 표현합니다. 에메랄드빛 바다와 푸르른 산 위로 사시사철 포근한 햇살이 내려앉는 곳. 이곳은 하와이입니다. 2005년 저는 한국을 떠나 하와이로 왔습니다. 24살 처음 만난 하와이는 너무나 아름다웠고 사람들은 더없이 상냥했습니다. 이들과 함께하며 눈부신 자연을 누리자면 짧은 여행으로는 부족했습니다. 저는 이곳에 정착하기로 마음먹었습니다. 그런데 살면서 보니 하와이는 겉으로 드러나는 아름다움 이면에 엄청난 이야기를 품고 있었습니다. 처음 제가 하와이를 여행할 때는 상상도 못했던 이야기들을 말입니다. 지금부터 그 이야기를 들려드리려고 합니다. Yes, so that's how the first prologue starts, and I talk about the things that really touch my heart. And one thing I would like to say is that it's just a glimpse of huge Korean immigrant history that I saw through my small window of knowledge, and it follows with the 5 interviews again with the Korean descendants, and I wanted to reveal the real part of the history through their voices. And the first episode is with Dr. Gary Park, and he is a great writer, and he was an English literature professor at UH. And I noticed that he's a member of CKS as well. The reason why I had Dr. Park in the first episode is that through pre-interview, when you were talking over Zoom, I realized that he sees something that other people don't see as a writer and an artist, and he has such profound insight. And he talked about his grandmother who passed down these words of love. I'd like to show some part of it.
My name is Gary Yonggi Pak. I'm a 3rd generation Korean American. I'm a local person, I guess, because I was born and raised in the islands. So I was pretty much raised with my maternal grandmother. I never visited Korea until the first time I visited was 2002. One time I hiked, I think Sorak-san, and there was a little shrine up in the top, and it was foggy, and I went to the shrine, and at the very top of the summit, and all of a sudden I had all these images of my maternal grandma, my Wei Harmony, and I just broke down. I don't know, I just started crying. It was like, that's one of the most emotional kind of times I've ever had. And like I said, I'm not going to write about it. I'm saying this right now on camera, and to you and stuff like that.
Is it because you feel like you're not ready yet, or like you will get too emotionally attached to the?
It's just that if I was to try to write about this, I don't think I'll be accurate, you know, because I just couldn't write enough, you know, write it in a depth that I should, you know. It's like, you know, for example, can you explain what Han is? You know, Han is this kind of historical thing that I knew my grandmother felt. You know, she had a lot of hardships in her life. She's from Gyeonggi-do, and her parents. She was orphaned when she was 4 years old, and her parents, my great grandparents, they were executed by the Japanese. The story is that they were, you know, teachers. They were educated, and I guess they maybe spoke out against that time. This is when the before the annexation, and they were the story is that they were executed. They were killed by the Japanese the soldiers and stuff. And so she was orphaned at 4 years old, and so she was raised in a Christian orphanage. And then when she was I think 16 or 17. I know she came to Hawaii when she was 18. She became a picture bride, and you know, she never met my grandfather, and she doesn't know anything about that, and she had no real, as a woman, as a female in Korea, especially if you're orphaned, you know, you have no, you know, status, nothing, you know. So she came. That was her only option, you know, and of course, then she was my grandfather. She raised 12 children and tons of grandchildren. And so I just felt, you know, and then also understanding Korean history and stuff, and I just felt a real, you know, tightness, you know, when I somehow I just had these, on the top of Soroksan, I just had these images of my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, my Wehalnani, and I just broke down, and so that's one of the most emotional kind of times I've ever had. I think the bottom line was just that the kind of love she gave me, you know, and the trust, and just the grandparents, the sacrifice, and you know, that's almost like a too worn phrase, how grandparents, they sacrifice and stuff, but they did, you know. When I met my sister for the first time, you know, I have a half sister in Korea, first time, you know, and the phrase that she told me was, you know, of course, Korean, they have this word, sarang, you know, love. But she said, you know, there's a deeper love, she told me, you know, and, you know, in her Korean, and I was trying to, and it's sojung, you know, sojung-hee, you know, this preciousness, this deeper love, you know, that you have. And I feel this, you know, and I think it's something that my grandparents, you know, shared with me.
There's like words of wisdom that you want to pass it on to the next generation. What would that be?
I remember growing up, and I could go to any one of my cousins' house or uncles and aunties like that, and I could just sit down there and we can eat, you know, and eat to our heart's content, you know. And I think that's the whole thing of food and love. That's a really important thing.
What if you don't have a family? You know, some people are not fortunate enough to have a good family when you're born or when you grow up. What would you say to those people?
Well, I think that we should always love people, you know. We should always love them, and we should really get out of just wanting to satisfy ourselves only, you know. We have to take care of ourselves, we have to feed ourselves and stuff like that. But I think we always have to think about the love for humanity, you know, to help out people and stuff, you know. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I really did enjoy talking with him, and yeah, it was really memorable time for me, especially because it was the very first episode. And the next episode was with the mayor of Big Island, Harry Kim. And he is a son of the plantation worker and also a picture bride from Korea. And according to him, he grew up really poor, but still he had this much love from especially his mom. And his mom was crucial for him to become such a big political leader in Hawaii. Here's what I have some from his episode.
Hey, good to see you. Thank you. I am Harry Kim. My parents, both of them, were born and raised in Korea. And unfortunately, the reason they came to Hawaii is because of hard times in Korea, whether it be of hardship of economy or war.
Do you know when?
You know, there's very little I know about my parents. When people interview me and the subject comes to, well, what is your greatest regret? Or what would you do differently? Always is the same answer. As a boy growing up, I wish I was better. I wish I was smarter. I wish I was a better thinker. I wish I was smart enough or adult enough to tell them, boy, you're something special, Dad. Yeah, and not even that. Not one time can I remember, not one time, saying thank you. How can that be, right? But I never thought my father worked 7 days a week, come back from working at the plantation in very hard ways, walking to and from work, and he would work in the garden. My mom working the same 7 days a week. I always wish I could tell my mom, how did you do it, Mom? How did you give birth to the 8 children? In a home with 1 bedroom, wooden stove at first, kerosene after that. I cannot imagine the pain they must have suffered, the sadness, the responsibility. When you learn about my oldest sister, which I never met, I'm told that she carried my sister to the plantation hospital, about 6 miles away, on her back, and told that your daughter's dead, carried her right back home. I cannot imagine the agony of that, the strength it takes to carry on, the strength it takes to carry on without self-pity. My sisters, I can see my mom in them, of what they did in their life.
And you became the first Korean descendant who became a mayor in the United States.
I knew how proud my mom would be. Did you know what it says of truth, of nationality? We are Americans and proud Americans. Those of ethnicity and of heart, we are from our home country. And my home country is Korea. And then I realized you have a responsibility, Harry, also to the Koreans in Korea. You represent them. Likewise, if you become something they're ashamed of, they would be ashamed too. If we grew up, I think, striving for materialism, I think we would be very unhappy people because we had nothing, right? And maybe that's what's wrong today. If you make materialism and money your goal in life, I think you will find a very, very empty and lonesome road at the end of the road. And I know within me that it's of truth. But you spend time just to make things better for others, not for you, but for others, and yours as well. It's going to be a very comforting end at the end of the road, because you'll be surrounded with good feelings. The biggest dream I have is, I think, what my parents had, and I just carried it on, that there will be one Korea. I think of that all the time.
Wow, this is very moving story. So where have you
shot this video?
With Mr.
Mr.
Kim.
Who?
It was on the Big Island.
Big Island.
Yeah, it was right at his backyard. The scene that you just saw where he was sitting, that's the big backyard of his own home. And I couldn't capture with the video, but there was like a black stones right around our own house. And I asked him what it was, and he said it was a lava. It was lava that was, that got hardened. He was such a wise man, and I really did enjoy talking with him.
I understand he has recently retired, and I remember he has been elected to mayor multiple times. Mrs. Lee, you know that?
Yes, sure. We all know him. I mean, long timers. No. He was very famous disaster management director. Big Island always have disasters, natural disasters. He really controlled Big Island. So it was, natural for him to become the mayor. And in fact, he is the first Korean mayor in America, and Korean descendant.
And I understand she received some honor recently, no?
He received the honorary doctorate degree from Inha University, I understand.
And then also from the state, so he was elected as a mayor 3 times, and before then, as Mrs. Murabayashi said, he was head of this disaster department, and he has so much respect, and people. He won by like more than 50% vote from the people of Big Island.
In fact, when we celebrated 100-year immigration, the celebration 2003, we had Mayor Kim, CJ Chief Justice Ron Moon, and Education Director Patricia Yamamoto, and Police Chief. And so it's all covered. Every field was covered by Korean descendants.
So directly, sorry to interrupt you. So you still have 3 more episodes to go. So can you please continue?
That was a good question for sure. I was so honored to have an interview with Mr. Kim in our episode, just because as you mentioned, he was such a symbolic, hero of not just the Korean community, but on the Big Island as well. When I was searching for materials, like when he was working in the disaster department, or I needed some newspapers, so I called in a lot of places on the Big Island. Every people, like everyone that I spoke with, at least, has such a high respect for Mr. Kim.
Okay. So what is the next episode that you want to introduce?
Yeah. So next one is number 4 episode. It was little bit different from other episodes in that all others, I had this person that I wanted to have a talk with. For example, like Mayor Kim and Chief Justice Moon that you will be watching right now. But then this person with Michael Lim, I wanted to reflect the story of Michael Lim. But before we get into the Michael Lim, let me quickly show you the episode with Chief Justice Moon. He also is the very first Korean who became the Chief Justice, just like the mayor.
오아우 섬은 하와이 정치, 경제, 문화의 중심지입니다. 하와이 주요 섬 중 인구도 여행자 수도 가장 많습니다. 오아우를 찾는 여행자들의 발길은 보통 와이키키를 향하는데요. 세계 최고의 휴양지이기 때문이죠. 물론 좀 더 모험심이 있는 여행자들은 와이키키를 벗어나 오아우의 숨은 아름다움을 찾아 나서기도 합니다. 하지만 외진 동네 와히아와를 일부러 찾는 이들은 별로 없습니다. 1920년대 와히아와는 수백여 명의 한국인이 모여 살던 이른바 한인타운이었습니다. 당시 태평양 연안에서 가장 큰 군부대가 이곳에 있어서 와이아와이 한인들은 이들 군인들을 상대로 세탁소나 수선점 같은 가게를 운영했는데요. 1세대 한인 이민자인 문정원 씨도 그중 한 명으로 사탕수수 노동자 계약이 끝나고 그는 곧 와이아와에 자그마한 양복점을 차렸습니다. 100여 년 전 바로 이 양복점 2층에서 문정원 씨와 그의 부인은 아들을 낳아 키웠습니다. 그리고 그 아들의 아들은 장차 하와이 그리고 미주 최초이자 유일한 한국인 대법원장이 됩니다.
Oh my goodness. That's when my sister, my youngest brother Duke, Junior Eric, Marilee, my sister, and me.
Oh, everyone is good looking. Seriously, it's a little Korean drama family character.
My father was a very gifted, and he gave a lot to the church and to the community. His door was always open to the store where they would come in and he would translate letters or notices from the government or,
So he was already doing the free legal service.
yes, he was.
So it was not just a religious, group of people.
No,
It's just- it's all-
the church was very central to the Koreans' activities in fighting for independence, sending goods to Korea to help the situation there. This was founded in 1919 by a group of Koreans led by Dr. Sigmund Rhee. Now, before I sit down, I would like to lead you in a cheer that I learned in August of 1945 when the church, the old church on Naval Street, gathered together after the Second World War in August of 1948. And I was 5 years old at the time, and I heard for the first time that I can recall what I believe is a national cheer, which is "What say?"
What is your biggest fear in life?
The biggest fear is to live your life and not contribute. I feel that way. You have to contribute something to your society that you live in. If you live your life and you cannot point to anything that you left behind. That is so sad.
Yeah, as a lawyer, it is really, I am proud of his achievement, and it is a great pleasure to see his face again. And I had met Chief Justice Moon multiple times, and he was always smiling, and he's so engaging and also supporting Korean studies and Korean general in Hawaii. So I'm really impressed by him, and I'm so glad that you chose Chief Justice Moon as one of your interviewees.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really inspirational to listen. As you said, whenever I went to all those Korean informal function, I often saw him giving speeches, and his speech made us being very proud of being Korean, and I thought for sure he has some values that he can pass on to the next generation that he got from his parents, and he really contributed a lot to this documentary.
So when is the fifth episode?
The fourth one, for the next one, is with Michael Lim, and I wanted to share this special story of couple An Won-gyu and Lee Jong-song. Maybe I can ask Mrs. Murabayashi to tell us about the couple.
both of them are very prominent. First of all, Mr. An Won-gyu, their Michael Lim's grandpa, maternal grandpa, was one of the successful businessmen and who supported independence movement from the beginning. And his wife, Jung Song-an, was a graduate of Ihwa Hakdang. And she came here to teach the young woman. Actually, she wanted to be a teacher. That's how she came. And both of them worked very, very hard for the Korean society, Korean community over here. Both of them are recognized by the Republic of Korea.
So I remember last year, South Korean President Moon Jae-in came to the Center for Korean Studies to award the national medal to her descendants, right?
It took a long time. Her husband was recognized about 30 years ago. And finally, actually, she was recognized as 독립장. She was given to 독립장 about 40 years ago. But finally, she was recognized as a patriot of a foundation. She got the merit of Foundation of Korea.
Right, and yeah, so I wanted to share a story of this wonderful couple, and my job was to find a descendant, because my theme is talking with a descendant of the Korean immigrants. For me, it was not easy because this couple had many successful descendants of theirs. One of them is Tae-Ung, who is the first female Supreme Court judge of Hawaii.
Granddaughter.
Was it granddaughter? And then Michael Lim, that I eventually had an interview with, is great-grandson of that couple. The reason why I decided to go with Michael Lim is that I believe sometimes the music can, say better than the words, actually. And I think he really did. Michael Lim and his wife, Nam Yu-sun, played a beautiful song dedicated to the Korean immigrants, and we'll watch that later. And this episode is special also in a way that we filmed it right here at 세계 한국학 연구의 메카, 하와이 대학 한국학 연구소에 가는 길은 언제나 즐겁습니다. 건물에서부터 한국적인 정취가 물씬 느껴져서일까요? 바라만 봐도 좋은 이곳에서 오늘은 특별한 손님을 만나기로 했습니다. 아름다운 선율로 소통하는 음악가 마이클 림은 조금 남다른 증조 할아버지 할머니를 가졌습니다. 26의 나이에 하와이로 이민와 이른해 세상을 떠날 때까지 고국의 독립운동과 하와이 한인 이민자들의 권익 신장에 모든 것을 바친 안원규, 그리고 남편 못지않은 용기와 기계가 넘쳤던 여성 리더 안정송. 하와이 이민사는 물론이고 대한민국의 독립운동 역사에 큰 발자취를 남기고 떠난 독립운동가 부부의 4대 손 마이클 림을 함께 만나보시죠.
My name is Michael Lim. I play violin with the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra. I also teach music in middle school and high school.
Glad to watch this video. Actually, I was next to that shooting scene, and very happy to meet with those musicians here.
Yeah, thank you. CK has helped us a lot, especially with this episode, and I'm glad that we were able to have this.
If I add a few words, we talked about Michael Lim's paternal grandparents, Mr. An, but actually his maternal grandparents are An. Paternal grandparents are Im Junho Moksa. Im Junho Moksa was our church leaders. So both sides, he has a good gene. Both sides as Korean leaders early on.
The family for sure seems to have like really emphasizes on education as well, because they're one of their daughters of the Mr. Won and Mrs. Lee. Florence is the first Korean person who got into Juilliard and became a soprano, Florence An. And then there's another daughter who was the first female dean of Tufts University. And Mr. An and Mrs. Lee must have like really, education drive for their children, even with the hardship and all that.
And for these episodes, you also traveled internationally, I remember.
Yeah, for the last episode, it was filmed in Incheon. Even with the COVID, I really wanted to have this last episode in Incheon because I wanted to cover the Jaemulpo port. That's where the very first 1 or 2 Korean people left 120 years ago. And while showing the Incheon that has been developed so much within 120 years, I wanted to see footsteps of the Korean ancestors who started from there. So let me show you a little bit of that. 지금 저는 무지개 나라의 유산이 시작된 곳을 향해 가고 있습니다. 무지개 나라의 유산 마지막 이야기는 하와이가 아닌 다른 곳에서 시작합니다.
국제공항에 도착했습니다. 비행기가 완전히 멈춘 후 좌석 벨트 표시등이 꺼질 때까지 자리에 앉아서 기다려주십시오.
한국 땅을 밟자마자 120여 년 전 우리 선조들의 흔적을 찾아가 봤습니다. 인천, 그중에서도 제물포항은 우리나라에서 서양 문물의 세례를 가장 먼저 받은 곳인데요. 월미공원 전망대에 올라 과거 제물포항이 있던 자리를 가늠해 봅니다. 하와이 한인 이민사, 나아가 미주 이민사가 바로 이곳에서 시작됐습니다. 있는데요. 인천의 인, 그리고 하와이의 하, 바로 인하대학교입니다. 이승만 박사가 1900년대 초반 하와이에 설립하고 운영했던 한인 기독학원 부지를 처분한 돈에 하와이 교민들의 성금, 여기에 인천시와 민간 기부금이 더해져 1954년 인하공과대학이 설립됐습니다. 네, 데이지연 교수님 오늘 함께해 주셔서 감사합니다. 제가 하와이에서 교수님 뵙고 싶어서 왔어요.
반갑습니다.
네, 반갑습니다. 오늘 이렇게 하와이 이민사가 시작된 곳 인천에서 교수님 뵙게 돼서 더 반갑습니다. 먼저 이민 1세인 교수님의 할아버님 얘기 듣고 싶어요. 1904년도에 어떻게 하와이에 가게 되셨는지 아시나요?
우리 할아버지께서는 그 3대로 내려오는 외아드님이셨어요. 그래서 어머니께서 점쟁이를 찾아가셔가지고 우리 아들이 어떻게 하면 아들을 많이 놓을 수 있습니까? 그렇게 물어봤더니 점쟁이가 그랬대요. 아드님이 아들을 많이 가지시려면 이름을 바꾸시고 멀리 떠나셔야 됩니다. 근데 때마침 그때 하와이의 그 슈거 플란테이션스 어소시에이션에서 일꾼을 찾는다는 그런 소식을 듣고 우리 할아버지께서 하와이로 가시기로 결정하셨대요.
그 옛날에, 그죠?
예.
아버님이 이제 꼭 대학을 갔으면 좋겠다고 하셨었어요?
네, 네. 우리 아버님은요, 참 스마트한 분이셨는데, 하와이를 갔다 왔다 했기 때문에 기회를 놓치셔서 고등학교도 못 졸업하셨어요. 그래서 우리한테 항상 하신 말씀이 공부는 많이 할수록 좋고 돈은 있다가도 없어지는데 공부는 아무도 뺏어갈 사람이 없다. 그러니까 공부는 많이 해두라. 한국학 공부를 하기로 결정을 했는데 막상 공부를 하러 갔더니 그때만 해도 한국에 책들이 하나도 없었어요. 번역한 책들이 특히 하나도 없었거든요. 그래서 제가 그때 마음 먹었어요. 내가 꼭 언젠가는 영어로 책을 써서 하와이 대학의 그 도서관에 갖다 기증하겠다.
대학교 때 그렇게 마음 먹으신 거예요?
네, 그래서 그렇게 마음을 먹었는데 70이 넘어가지고 그거를 실천했어요. 네.
그 실천하신 책이 바로
네.
이 금강산의 보라 부인이라는 책이에요, 교수님, 그죠?
네.
아니 50년 걸렸지만 이렇게 좋은 책을 쓰셨으니 너무 보람된 일인 거죠, 그죠? 교수님 감사합니다. 교수님 끝으로 제가 이 교수님이 쓰신 책 읽으면서 되게 개인적으로도 그렇고 다른 사람들이랑 나누고 싶었던 구절이 하나 있어요. 읽어드려도 될까요? 이 금강산 보라 부인이 결혼을 해서 떠날 때, 그러니까 그 아버지가, 친정 아버지가 보라 부인에게 이제 앞으로 힘내서 잘 살아라 이런 이제 덕담을 해주시는 부분이에요. 고통이 도무지 견딜 수 없는 거라면 내 어미에게 도움을 빌어라. 내 어미는 자신의 목숨을 버리면서까지 너를 낳았다. 어미의 사랑이 내 가슴 속에 늘 있음을 명심해야 한다. 사랑이 모든 해악으로부터 너를 보호할 것이니 어미의 희생을 생각하며 힘을 내고 용기를 갖도록 해야 한다.
Wow, this is really moving story. And as you may know, Dr. Tae-Ung and also Dr. Song-Chul Yang Song-Chul 전 대사님 donated $250,000 to this Center for Korean Studies to create the Yang's lecture. And we annually actually host the Yang's lecture with an eminent speaker, here, coming here. And I didn't know that Dr. Tae-Ung speaks such wonderful Korean, but it's very, very great to hear about her story. And I also saw Yang Song-Chul 대사님's face in the movie, but here we don't have that part. But probably Dr. Song-Chul Yang will be also very happy to see this later.
Yeah, they were such a wonderful couple. I was really honored to have them in my film. It was like a 10-hour filming, but Yang Song-Chul 대사님 was there waiting for his wife so very patiently. And even without the camera, they always had like this great saying, encouraging me for filming. That was really inspirational.
If I may add,
Sure.
a funny part of the story. Daisy Yang's grandpa came to Hawaii because of the shaman. The Jamjengi told, he had to move far away to get to have voice, right? But the first immigrant group left Incheon Jemulpo Harbor on December 22, 1902. Reverend Jones had a prayer meeting. Korean immigration group is the only group who had a service before they left their mother country to move to other country. And 1 year later, this person was told by the shaman to go to.
So, directly, out of these 6 episodes, which is the most memorable one for you?
But seriously, every episode has its own unique story and points that touch my heart, and I hope it is like that for everyone too. But there's one episode, like one part of this episode that helped me personally going through producing this documentary. It was from Mayor Harry Kim's episode. One time I asked him how he handles the stress, because being a mayor and being the chief of the disaster management must be a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. And there were times that I had under stress and pressure, even if I enjoyed like really every single moment of producing this documentary. There were times that I was losing confidence if I can really complete this well or not. And when I had his this part of his answer that really got me through this journey as a filmmaker, and let me show you that part.
Being a mayor for like 12 years, I wanted to ask you this as well. There must be time that you feel really stressed and you can't just complain to anybody, right?
Oh, I
but
do.
What do you do something? But how do you cope with your stress? Like when you want to feel happier, what do you do?
The hardest job I had was not mayor. The hardest job I had in regards to people, decision making, was 24 years of civil defense.
Well, many remember Harry Kim's deep voice on the radio that would inform people of natural disasters. It was perhaps during this time that he became a local legend.
As lava approached homes, Kim was on the front lines.
All residents in local 90 Street, Malta, Highway 130, please leave the area due to smoke and fire hazard and the lava flow approaching this area.
With that iconic voice of calm, even in the face of disaster.
And when you have the responsibility of people who depend on government to be there when you need them, that's a hell of a burden. We can never undo damage. That's not our job, although we did follow up and we're still following up. When you know with all you feel that you did your best, with the best information you have, and even if you could Monday night quarterback, turn it back, there's very little you would have changed, except not make it happen, which you cannot change. There will always be criticism. But as long as you know of truth, this is the best you could do. And when you make the decision, I've told people that when training, if you know within yourself, even if you could turn the clock back, you could not have done it different. There is no stress. Believe it or not, there is none.
Directly, I know the documentary is receiving very good attention at various festivals.
Yes.
How do you feel?
Oh, I feel so grateful. Yeah. I never imagined something like this, but it was accepted. Some of the festivals around the world, like India, China, or Stockholm, or even in Korea, and I was able to meet Korean audiences that were really memorable. And one of the best festivals that I had the great experiences was with Hawaii Film Festival. And I was so overwhelmed by the reaction of it. And the fact that I was able to invite people who were in the film, including Mrs. Murabayashi and Mr. Harry Kim and Chief Justice Moon, everybody in there watching the outcome of it. It was just a thrilling experience. The only person that I missed for the world premiere in the Kahala Theater is you, Dr. Baik, because you're away on the mainland. But I feel really sorry because I know that you have so much, and except for you, everybody were able to make it. So I was really feeling grateful. And there's a funny story. I had my editor in Korea. I worked with the videographers in Hawaii, but there was a great editor who worked with me, whose name is Im Do-yeon. And what he did was more than I asked that he would have to do initially. So like it was basically more work than I thought. And still he worked so hard. Like he never complained. We always exchanged idea to make a better product. So I promised him, hey, if it ever gets into Hawaii Film Festival, I'll send you a flight ticket so then you come and we'll watch it together. I never thought that we would get accepted, but it got accepted. And then I was like, oh, but I ended up sending him the flight ticket happily. It was I wish I did. It was the economy. It was just cash because actually he couldn't make it because of the COVID, and then he had some other schedule, but he said he will save money to come. But the lucky thing is that when we were at the festival in Korea, there was a screening in Korea, and he was able to come and watch it together. That was awesome experience for sure.
You have selected various Korean immigrants with different background and working field. How have you selected your interviews, and was there any story that you want to share?
Yeah, that was the most important part, I think, to choose who interview, because everybody has a special story. But I wanted to review Korean immigrant history from different perspective and different walk of life, and Dr. Park being a writer has a different perspective, and Michael Lim being a musician for sure has a different perspective, and Mayor Kim being a political leader, he emphasized so much contributing to the society you live in. So I'm really happy to be able to share all those different messages through different people.
Mrs. Murabayashi, what do you think about those people who are selected for these episodes, especially implication on Korean immigration research?
Actually, I'm not the right person to give you the right answer. Just because there's so many other stories like this, through my over 30-year research in Korean immigration history. However, I can tell you, I'm really, really happy. Happily surprised that Jinyoung really upgraded the Korean immigration history to modern visual form. And people don't read the books, papers anymore, and this is just perfect medium she chose. So I'm really thankful. Thank you.
That's very sweet. Thank you very much, Mrs. Murabayashi. One thing I want to mention that I always had this high respect for historian or scholars or researchers like Mrs. Murabayashi or Dr. Baik, but through a process of making this documentary, I have even higher respect because, as you said, there are people like Mrs. Murabayashi who spent 30 years researching justice, and then I just use a little bit of here and there, and to be there as a director, I feel almost like ashamed, to say that. But for her to acknowledge the work I do, it just really means a lot.
So, Mrs. Murabayashi, we saw some of the kind of old immigrants here, and also young immigrants as well. And you have lived already here in Hawaii longer than 53
years.
Yeah.
Too old, too long.
So, do you see any kind of changes?
Well, the earlier immigrant and the modern immigrant after the 1969, their similarities is, of course, they work hard. They really concentrate or promoted education for their children. So that's the similarity, but that ends there. The difference, of course, the biggest difference is the mother country's political and economical situation. The modern immigrant don't have to worry about, don't have to sacrifice for the country's independence movement. But the other biggest difference is the attitude or method of promoting children's education. The earlier immigrants were silent role model to their children. They worked hard. They sacrificed their meager financial means they have, but they sacrificed for the mother countries to become an independent nation. That itself, they never had to say, study hard. There was no nagging. They never said, 공부해라. Whereas the modern immigrant, they nag. I may cautiously say, in general, the tendency is nagging while they're watching drama on TV. No offense to KBFD, but just, it's the showing themselves, working hard to save the nation. That was the role model to instill the educational to their children. So the descendants like C.J. Moon and Harry Kim, through their life, their young time, they went through very, very hard life. But everybody was successful in their chosen fields because they knew how to work hard and how to learn hard to become a successful person.
Directly, while you're making this movie and documentary, have you learned any new things in Korean immigration history?
Everything, seriously, everything. I only had a really vague idea of Korean immigrant history in Hawaii, but seriously, everything was new to me. And especially, I never knew that Korean women were so working hard for the freedom of their nation, and also contributed a lot in establishing themselves and Koreans in general. And if I could add to Ms. Murabayashi's comment earlier, when I was talking to her over the phone the other day, I was kind of talking to her like, I feel really worried because last 1 year I was just working, in front of the camera. I wasn't being a good mom, I have 2 young kids, and then Mrs. Murabayashi was very nice enough to say that to me, hey, Jinyoung, like showing them you working hard, you reading, you researching, that's no better education. So that made me really feel better, for sure. I felt good.
Very good job, Mrs. Murabayashi. So, do you think this documentary is helpful for immigration research and studies?
Well, that some of us been very concerned about, not the young generation coming out to do immigration history. Here it is. I mean, we're really grateful that Jinyoung took over this responsibility. So, actually, she's really showcasing the Korean immigration history to modern, different medium. So really thankful for your effort.
Oh, thank you so much for encouraging words. Seriously, even though it was not an easy task, producing documentary. Funny thing is that I worked as a writer or announcer for the past 15 years, but for this past year that I was working on this documentary, this was the most rewarding and the most interesting project that I was on. I never thought that I'm working. Like all these interview footages were each was 4 hours long, and I had to edit it into 20 minutes. So I was watching it over and over so many days, and it was like reading a good book. Like every time you go back, you see something new, something different. Like it wasn't a work for me. It was so inspirational. Even like I was just watching the clip when I was watching Dr. Young's paragraph. There's a part where it says that love will protect you from the harm. It's such a beautiful saying. Like I will never get tired of it. And I'm thankful that Mrs. Murabayashi. I always have a hard time pronouncing your name, but you know what I want to say. I have to try.
So I'm very much interested in thinking about immigrants' identity. It's not always easy to speak on a person's identity. One of my friends, who is a Korean American, told me that he would be cheering American team if there is a soccer game going on between the U.S. and Korea. However, he also liked to stand out himself as a Korean, and Korean food is his favorite food. So we generally live with multiple identities, I think, not only one identity. But I would like to ask you the same questions. Who do you think you are? Are you an immigrant? And what do you think about yourself? And what is your purpose of your life in the United States?
Yeah, it's a question that I need to think over and over, for sure. It's a very important question, and it's a question that I ask myself several times. Of course, I see myself as an immigrant. I lived like almost half of my life in Korea and then second half here. And because I'm an immigrant myself, I think I was able to relate to the story of the first Korean immigrants because I personally went through language barriers and homesickness or all those, like, even with the 110 years of the time difference. And in terms of that, my purpose of life will be continue documenting this Korean immigrant history that I believe is so important for the future generation. And also, that gives me really meaning of my life. So I will continue to do so.
So while creating this documentary, you wrote and directed and also interviewed all these projects. Was it easy work? I don't think so, but what do you think? Can you do it again?
Yeah. So even though the fun from she never cooked, that's true, and never cleaned or never did the
I know
dishes.
she cooked as well. Yeah, she cooks.
Very is always so nice, but I didn't. Sorry. But even though the fund from the Korean consulate covered more than half of the production cost, which I am really grateful for, I needed the second funding to cover the entire production cost, but I couldn't obtain one, I think, partly because it's my first film, but I still was able to complete it only because there were so many people who helped me. If I could name a few, first of all, the CKS, Center for Korean Studies, just as its existence stands alone, it plays such a big role, especially in the prologue episode. And I later realized that a lot of people that I covered in the film, including Dr. Gary Park, Dr. Edward Schurz, Dr. Baik, Dr. Mrs. Murabayashi, and also Hawaiian Lee, who helped me a lot getting people for the interview. They are all members of CKS. I really didn't realize it. It just means that leading members of the Korean community are the members of CKS. So I feel really grateful for that. And also, is there something that you wanted to add? No. And then also, Korean consulate, they not only providing funding, but also they developed the ideas with me, seriously, and the Consul General Hong Seok-in always encouraged me. He never said, please don't do or do this. And I feel really grateful to have also Consul Jinyoung Park, who always consult with, talk with me for better idea. And also the Korean media, like the Korea Times and KBFT TV, over past few decades, they have written these articles about Korean community. Those were valuable sources for me to research on this topic. And not just Korean media, like even KITV or Hilo Tribunes or other local media, when I called them and said, I'm producing this non-profit documentary about Korean immigrant history, they were all very nice to share their footage, without charging a fee. And I felt so grateful to be a part of this supportive community for sure. And one of my local filmmaker friends, he said something interesting. He said, there's a saying, it takes village to raise a child. He said that it takes an island to make a movie. For sure, it really was the case for me, and I feel so grateful to be a part of this supportive community.
Actually, we have seen her as an anchor woman of KBFT TV news. And I didn't know that she had this great talent creating beautiful documentary film, but you did a successful job. So by this documentary, what do you want the future generation learn from watching this and learning about this?
Yeah, I want them to know basically how much love seriously we have received, and I want them to know the sacrifice that was there for us to be here where we are now. And when they learn their culture and history, I hope they learn their friends' culture and history as well. Because I believe that when you know each other's culture and history, you can live better together, basically. And history is something that we take it for granted, but I realized through this process of making documentary, it's something that you must know because it gives you really meaning of life, and you feel really loved because that's the result of the effort of Korean ancestors. And then there's one part from my prologue episode that really wise people left a message for the future generation, and I want you to share that part with our viewers. Is that okay?
하와이 선인들은 참 대단한 분이었어요. 스스로 이제 나라 잃은 그 백성으로서의 서름을 딛고 서로 돕고 또 그러면서 스스로 조직하고 또 그 자기 자신을 넘어서서 이제 이 사회 전체를 위해서 뭔가를 해낸 사람들이잖아요.
Well, my grandfather always said, and it came down through my dad, that Koreans never give up. They never have given up, and they never will give up. And so it was stamped within our foreheads, so to speak.
They've always been entrepreneurial, and so they were able to get out of plantation work, which many of them came here initially to do, almost right away and began to build businesses. And so they have that legacy here in Hawaii, which is very proud.
Perfect. And it's the diversity of Hawaii that makes Hawaii so successful. In appreciating and understanding and respecting each of the different cultures, it's just beautiful as far as what the relationships are. Yeah. And that's why I'm so very, very proud of the Koreans' contribution to the county of Oahu and the state of Hawaii as a whole.
I think we got to come to a point where, yeah, we are different. That's great. Let's appreciate our differences, religion, gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is, that kind of thing. Otherwise, this anti-Asian, anti-black, anti-whatever, transsexual, anti-this, anti is going to continue to go on until we really deal with it on the level of, what is this about?
Korea, from earliest times on, was producing just masterpieces in art, literature, and it's often forgotten. And so I'm hoping that if Korean kids in particular, but basically everybody, if they can understand their past and understand their history, then they can stand up to this. Even if they're being attacked, they can know that they can fight back, that this is not right. So my answer is empowerment. Study history and be empowered. Know your roots, know how strong your traditions are, and defend them.
Directly, do you also have anything to say to Korean community in Hawaii, and also to Korean people? How do you want Korea look at immigrants in Hawaii?
Yeah, I hope Koreans in Korea when they watch this documentary, hopefully they see what it was like to live in a new land as immigrants. There are many immigrants in Korea from Philippines and from Vietnam. It's like a picture bride almost 120 years in Korea. And when they see this documentary, I hope they will have this insight into what it's like to be an immigrant and the difficulties that the immigrants in Korea might face, and hopefully we can live better together.
And Mrs. Murabayashi, what was the best thing about this documentary, if you can say?
All these episodes showed the immigrants' lives and the immigrant descendants' success side. We may see immigrants surging in, new immigrants surging in from Korea in the coming years. Beware, Hawaii. Koreans are coming. Koreans are coming. That's my message. Thank you.
Great. So, thank you again for all of the wonderful answers and remarks, both of you. And I'm sure we have some audience in currently with us. Those audience also have some questions. So we still have around 9 minutes left. So let's have the chance to hear from our audience if there's any questions. So please turn on your microphone and video. And if you want to ask any questions, please raise your hand or start to speak so that I can know who wants to speak. Is there any question or any comments? So while waiting for the comments, and I would like to also propose to talk a little bit about the final closing of this event. After this Q&A, if there's any questions coming up, I would like to close this event by showing the beautiful music play done by Michael Lim in front of the Center for Korean Studies. So probably we should, end with our greeting before that final video clip. So final opportunity for the audience to say anything or to ask any questions. Do you have any questions or any comments? Otherwise, I would close today's event. Again, thanking to Director Jinyoung Lee Won and also Mrs. Murabayashi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
And I hope this is the beginning of our dialogue on Korean diaspora, and hope we will continue with some greater and other achievements later.
Give her some homework.
Yes. So before closing, directly, do you have anything to say?
Maybe homework? She's telling you to give me homework. When, if you give me homework, I feel like I have to do it. But I just want to say thank you for this wonderful opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to kind of go over and think about what I did and what I can do better next time. And even if you're nice enough not to give me a homework, but I know that she's already giving me a homework with her. There's a fever I can see. I like to produce season 2 when a lot of things are ready, maybe toward the end of the year, because there are so many new stories, there's so many new history that I recently found through the process, and I'm sure Mrs. Murabayashi and you will be a great help for that new journey.
Yeah,
Thank you very
of
much.
course. And it was so great to work with you and a fun process. So we'll be happy to do more projects in the future. If things are clearer later, please contact us. And Mrs. Murabayashi, do you have anything to add as your final words?
We don't have to look for any more young person to continue the research. She can do better than what I have done. That's
We need more people.
Really.
Yeah, and we will surely have more researchers and also students in the future, owing to our directory's work and continuous efforts that we have been exerting. So thank you again for joining today's event. And this, as I said, concludes our two-day Korean diaspora talk. And we will come back with more Korean diaspora-related events and other through other means, including the digital exhibition or the publication of digital media and also academic conferences that will be following. Thank you again for your time with us, and hope during this pandemic you will continuously keep yourself healthy and be safe. Thank you very much.
Dedicate this piece to not only my great-grandparents, but to all the Korean immigrants who came and worked so hard so that we could have the lives that we have here today in Hawaii.